Muslims have a very high view of Muhammad, and he is considered by the Quran to be a perfect pattern of conduct. And so I'm going to show the Muslims that their precious prophet did indeed own and trade black slaves. So we can see, first of all, in Sahih Bukhari 61:61, Allah's messenger was on a journey and he had a black slave called Ashraf, and he was driving the camels very fast, and there were women riding on those camels. Allah's messenger said, Waka, may Allah be merciful to you. O Ashraf, drive slowly the camels with the glass vessels, the women. So we can clearly see here that the hadith does indeed show that Muhammad did own a black slave. Let's continue on because there's numerous hadiths about Muhammad owning slaves and trading slaves, but I'm going to provide a few more for your viewing. Sahih Bukhari 67:16. Jabir said, an Asnar man made his slave a mudbar, and he had no other property than him. When the Prophet heard of that, he said to the companions, who wants to buy him the slave for me? Umar bin Hasham bought him for 800 demirs. I heard Jabir saying that was a Coptic slave who died in the same year. So here Muhammad wants the individual to buy the slave for him. But it's clear that Muhammad would own the slave. Let's continue on. We can see in Sahih Bukhari 21:41, narrated Jabir bin Abdullah, a man decided that a slave of his would be manumitted, which is set free after his death. And later on, he was in need of money, so the Prophet took the slave and said, who will buy the slave from me? Jabir bin Abdullah bought him for such and such a price, and the Prophet gave him the slave. So here we can clearly see that Muhammad is indeed trading slaves. Let's continue on. We can also see in Sahih Muslim 1602, it says, there came a slave and pledged allegiance to Allah's apostle on the migration. He, the Holy Prophet, did not know that he was a slave. Then there came his master and demanded him back, whereupon Allah's apostle said, sell him to me. Did you notice it? It said, sell him to me, which is quite clear that Muhammad is in the business of buying and selling slaves. It says, and he bought him for 2 black slaves, and he did not afterwards take allegiance from anyone until he had asked him whether he was a slave or a free man. Now, there's a couple things we need to highlight here, of course. Notice the heading. It says the permissibility of selling animals for animals of the same kind and of different quality. So here in the Muslim culture here, that slaves were not even considered people. They were considered animals. And we can clearly see with regards to the highlighted part there that Muhammad did indeed buy and sell the slaves. And so it's quite clear based on the testimony of the hadith literature that Muhammad was a slave owner, and he indeed had black slaves as well. So this goes to show that Muhammad is not the perfect pattern of conduct, because that's where he made a lot of his money. He made a lot of his money being a slave trader and in the warfare to spread Islam.